Are you thinking about making a podcast? If you are, I know you want to be able to make that podcast in a way that's easy and not complicated. And you want to be able to make that podcast in a way that it's not going to cost you an arm or a leg. Well, I have a solution for you. It's called Anchor. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast. Here's what you need to do. Download the free Anchor app today or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm to get started. Start your podcast today. Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, July the 17th, 2020. It is currently 9:39 a.m. Central Time. And in this episode of the Currently On podcast, we're going to turn our attention back to the show Warrior Nun. Now, Warrior Nun is currently streaming on Netflix. We've talked about it in a number of episodes. I think the show is extremely interesting. I think there are multiple layers to the show, which kind of provides something for everyone. I think even if you're not really interested in maybe the premise of the show, and maybe you find some of it a little bit over the top, I think there is enough there to make it an entertaining viewing experience. So currently on Netflix is the show Warrior Nun. I'm definitely recommending it. And well, I'm recommending it so much that I keep talking about it in episode after episode of this podcast. And I'm hoping there's people out there who's really appreciating my analysis, because I think I'm really digging in, and I think my analysis I'm providing is very different than what I am seeing everywhere else, because everywhere else is kind of looking at it maybe from the perspective of a TV show, the action, the acting, maybe the story, but I think they're missing out when they ignore kind of the theological foundation to some of this. The show definitely has a biblical and theological foundation. And when I say it has a theological and biblical foundation, I'm saying that that element is a major part of the story. Think about it this way. I've already pointed this out a number of times. Each episode, the title of each episode is a scripture reference. When you are giving your show, when you are giving the title for your show a scripture reference, every episode's title is from the Bible or from scripture. I think you're definitely saying, hey, there is a spiritual, theological, biblical element to this. And if you're going to review the show, analyze the show, talk about the show, and you kind of overlook that, ignore that, or maybe in some cases the reviewers don't feel very qualified to talk about that, then I think you're really missing out in that key aspect of the show. So because I do have degrees in theology, religious education, Bible, I think I can at least offer an analysis that doesn't ignore that part of the show. And I think that is what is making these episodes worth your time to listen to. All right. So let's dig in. We have a lot to cover. We have a lot to say, and I will just say the episode that I watched last night, I'm still a little baffled by the scripture they chose for the title. I'm really like, what? Why did they choose that? Like, okay, I'm still trying to figure that out. And I don't know if I have a good answer, but the episode itself, though, started bringing in some very important concepts that we're really going to dig into. And these concepts were really built in the previous episode. But let's kind of get us back. Let's get us all on the same page, all right? Just a basic overview. Warrior Nun is an American fantasy drama web television series based on the comic book character Warrior Nun. It was originally developed as a feature film adaptation The idea was reimagined as a television series for Netflix when the service had given the production a series order for a first season. Filming took place in multiple locations in Spain. All right. The series debuted on July the 2nd, 2020 on Netflix to positive reviews, and you can add my positive review to the show so far. The premise is very simple. Warrior Nun revolves around the story of a 19-year-old woman. Her name is Ava. All right. I haven't mentioned her name in previous episodes. I just refer to her as the 19-year-old. I try to be as vague as I can whenever I discuss a show because I don't like to ruin it for anyone. And I don't want to have to do, here's one review, here's a spoiler-free review, and here's a full review. I don't like to do all of that. I just like to talk about it in a way that if you've watched it, I can give you some things to think about, and if you haven't watched it, I don't ruin it for you, and then you can think about those things when you watch it. That's the way I approach it. Whether people like that or not, only time will tell. Even if people don't like it, I doubt I'm going to change it, all right? So Warrior Nun involves around the story of a 19-year-old woman, Ava, all right, who wakes up in a morgue with a new lease on life and a divine artifact embedded in her back. Now remember, this divine artifact is called a halo. She discovers she is now part of the ancient order of the cruciform sword that has been tasked with fighting demons on earth, and powerful forces representing both heaven and hell want to find and control her. Now, remember, as I said, kind of one of the foundational elements to the show is this these religious and theological ideas. I mean, you can obviously think about it. She's got a religious artifact in her body. She finds out she's a part of this, how do they call it? Ancient order of the cruciform sword. Well, this ancient order is a part of the Catholic Church. So you've got priests, you've got nuns, it's called Warrior Nun. You've got the Vatican involved. You've got religious artifacts. You've got sacred text. You've got, so much of the storytelling revolves and brings in religious elements. Then to add to that, each episode is named after a scripture. Let me give you, again, I'll just remind you, episode 1 was entitled Psalms 46:5. Episode 2 was entitled Proverbs 31:25. Episode 3 was entitled Ephesians 6:11. And that brings us to the episode I viewed last night. Episode 4, Ecclesiasticus 26, verses 9 through 10. So Ecclesiasticus chapter 26, verses 9 through 10. Now, I'm just sitting here thinking Ecclesiasticus 26, 9 through 10, Ecclesiasticus 26, 9 through 10. And the more I think about the scripture reference, the more I'm a little baffled by this. Let me read the scripture for you. Now, just note that Ecclesiasticus, if you are a Protestant, in your Protestant Bible, you're not going to find this. It's a text accepted as being inspired and authoritative by the Catholic Church. It would be an apocryphal book. We can get into a whole discussion about the religious text, its history, its different names. We could get into all of that, but I don't want it to turn into a discussion there. What I want to do is, here's this text, this sacred text considered inspired by at least Roman Catholicism. And I think there's we could get to a whole history of the text, but that's okay. The question becomes, why did they call episode 4 Ecclesiasticus, what was it again? I don't want to give you the wrong reference, 26, 9 through 10. Why did they use that? Now, in the previous episode, the passage from Ephesians, that made perfect sense. It fit in perfectly with the episode. It really gave us some insight. This one I'm still baffled by, but let me just read the text for you. All right, let me just read the text for you. Ecclesiasticus, all right, Ecclesiasticus 26, 9 through 10. The whoredom of a woman may be known in her haughty looks and eyelids. If thy daughter be shameless, keep her in straitly, lest she abuse herself through overmuch liberty. So Ecclesiasticus 26, 9 through 10. Let me read that again. The whoredom of a woman may be known in her haughty looks and eyelids. If thy daughter be shameless, keep her in straitly, lest she abuse herself through overmuch liberty. Now, it seems that Ava, the kind of the main character in the show, the 19-year-old, who ends up with this religious artifact in her body, she's viewed by the religious people in a very negative way. When she, there's a major part of the story where she spent, the first 19 years of her, I can't say the entire 19 years of her life, a large portion of the first 19 years of her life, she spent that in an orphanage. And I'm not going to tell you everything about it, but let's just say it seems that she wasn't really viewed in a good way, and that she was kind of haughty, arrogant, unsubmissive. Definitely, I guess you could say she was haughty, she was unsubmissive, she was rebellious. So the whoredom of a woman may be known in her haughty looks and eyelids. Is that a reference to the way she is perceived by the religious? The outside of the orphanage, after she finds herself out of the orphanage, and now she's kind of quote unquote a part of this ancient order. You've got the cardinal and some of the other nuns who view Ava almost as she's an unbeliever. She's not worthy of this ancient artifact. She's haughty. She's not unsubmissive. She doesn't listen. And she demonstrates that attitude a little bit. So is that a reference to the way she is perceived by the religious? Maybe. I don't know. I think that's a possibility. And in that next part, which is interesting, if thy daughter be shameless, keep her in straitly, lest she abuse herself through overmuch liberty. Now, this is an interesting part because, and I think we can put this together here, because I think this is interesting. This is kind of a warning. Hey, if you've got to keep her straitly because she's going to abuse herself with overmuch liberty. Well, Ava, here's the situation. And this builds perfectly with episode 3. Episode 4 begins with these words: I want to live. That's how episode 4 begins, with these words: I want to live. Now, the reason this is fascinating is because episode 3 really gave us this dilemma that Ava finds herself. She has basically two choices. Does she choose to live for self? Does she choose to live to please herself, to do the things she wants, to experience the things she wants, for pleasure, for enjoyment, for self-gratification, self-advancement? Does she decide to live life for self, or does she decide to, in a sense, sacrifice self-pleasure, self-gratification, self-pursuit to live for this divine purpose, the sacred purpose of serving God and fighting demons and serving the church? She's presented with these two choices. Well, Ava wants to live. She seems to kind of have a haughty, rebellious kind of attitude at times. She wants to live. She wants this liberty. But if she gets this liberty, will she end up basically abusing and hurting herself? So they need to keep her in straitly. They need to try to keep her. They need to go find her. They need to grab her. They need to try to keep her there. Do they attempt to hurt her? So this is a very interesting thing. Now, what is fascinating is that Ava, in the end of episode 3, she decides, I want to live. She basically pursues living for self. I'm trying not to give too much away here. And then in episode 4, where she perceives to have this liberty, she perceives to have this freedom, she finds herself constantly not pursuing the freedom, but turning back to serving a higher purpose, pursuing, helping, getting involved, trying to make something right. And she constantly keeps being pulled back into this, which demonstrates the conflict. She is constantly struggling with these two ideas. Look, I want to live, and she truly wants to live, and she truly wants to experience all of these things, and she truly wants to experience this pleasure. But there's something in her that keeps pulling her back into these situations where she's trying to help. Then she thinks, okay, good, I'm done trying to help because that didn't go well. Okay, I'm going to get my freedom. Oh, wait, I can't. Something's not right. So then she goes to try to fix another problem. It's like she's having this internal conflict between these two things to choose. And I like that from a religious perspective. From a theological, religious, and I will say Christian perspective, because that's the perspective I would come at this from, as anyone who's been a Christian can understand this dilemma. Like, okay, I'm supposed to lay down my life, take up my cross, in a sense, die to self, and I'm supposed to follow Christ. I'm just supposed to follow God. But there's always something inside us that says, I want to live. I want to live. I want this. And so this really demonstrates this internal conflict that I think all religious people can at least relate to. And at the same time, you could apply this in a very secular way. Remember, this is a young adult drama. She's 19. There's this idea that I think a young people could relate to, because you could look at it from a completely secular standpoint, forget the religious connotations, and forget the fact that they're using scripture for the titles. If we just look at it from a purely secular point of view, not bringing in the religious aspects, every 19-year-old, 18-year-old, 17-year-old, 16-year-old, 15-year-old, they want to live life for themselves, but there's always these demands around you like, well, you're going to have to get a job, and what are you going to do with your future? And you've got responsibilities, and you need to be thinking about this, and you need to be thinking about that. And you're like, I just want to live. I just want to have fun. So I think that this conflict can be viewed from a religious perspective or the perspective of a young person. I think even adults, as they get older, they sometimes will get past that teenage thinking, accept the responsibilities of adulthood, and then they reach a certain point in that, sometimes I call it a midlife crisis, where they're like, you know what? I want to live. I'm tired of responsibility. I'm tired of the 9 to 5. So I think that there's enough here that anyone can relate to this struggle that she is experiencing. And I think it's really interesting of the scripture they used that she kind of is she going to abuse herself through the liberty? Do they need to keep her straightly? Do they need to go find Ava and capture her and hold her there until she realizes she's supposed to submit? How is this supposed to be done? Is she kind of viewed as, the way the text, let me go back to Ecclesiasticus 26. Give me 1 second. I got to open up my iPad again. Is she the quote unquote the woman of the whoredom of a woman? Does Ava really kind of demonstrate the whoredom of a woman because of her haughty looks and her eyelids and her attitude? I mean, they definitely demonstrate this little bit of a rebellious attitude. They do it and they use the same. They use the same thing in two scenes to demonstrate it. I'll just say when she's in the orphanage and this nun's trying to take care of her, who clearly views Ava almost as this horrible person, she gives the nun the finger. And then when Ava finds herself in a different situation with these other nuns, she does the exact same thing. She gives them the finger. So this has really become symbolic of kind of basically saying, hey, I'm going to do it my way. And so I think that maybe why that passage was chosen, and Ava does kind of represent this. But there's another element in episode 4, an episode Ecclesiasticus 26, all right? I guess that's typically, I don't even really call it episode 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then they give it a title. So in episode 4, Ecclesiasticus 26, okay, you get the idea. Here's another weird element. And I love this because it raises kind of ethical questions. Let me say this before we kind of raise this question. In episode 4, I said that this is possibly what was going to happen. They really start making the nuns, the church, they really start presenting them in a negative light. All right. And that's a little unfortunate because it's a little too stereotypical, right on the nose. Now, I understand within Christianity, within the Catholic Church, within churches, there's always all kinds of bad and messed up and wrong motivations. But let's just make this clear. Messed up, wrong motivations is not, simply the expertise of religious people and the church. Wrong motivations and wrong desires is the experience of the human condition, and it can be found in any organization. It can be found in any individual. But they really pull this out here with those in the Catholic Church, which is kind of interesting because in some ways, this order of Catholic nuns, in some ways, they're supposed to be kind of the heroes because they're supposed to be fighting demons, but they're not as good as you think they would be. So it's really interesting. Like, so are they the protagonists or are they the antagonists? What are they? Right? Are they the good or the bad? And then the scientists, who are really the antagonists in some ways in the story, are they more the protagonist? Because do they have better motives, or is everyone's motives in this show questionable and not, like, in other words, no one really comes out as truly holy? Maybe Ava, in a way, in some ways, even though she's demonstrated this idea that she wants to live for self, she keeps being pulled back to trying to do the right, to try to help people and do the right thing. So there's this weird, like, who's really the good people here? Who's the good team? Who's the good team here? So I kind of knew that was coming, and it happened. But here is really what you see in episode 4 that I think is really interesting. And I wrote the question down this way. Let me look at how I wrote the question down, because I don't want to say it in an incorrect way, because I think it's kind of interesting. All right. Can a wrong be done to stop a wrong? Can you do wrong in order to stop a wrong? And does that cancel out the wrong you are doing? All right. So in other words, let's say you are nuns in the Catholic Church, a part of a secret order in order to fight demons. And there's wrong being done in the world. Can then you go and do wrong? Can you do wrong in order to stop that wrong? And if you do, does it cancel out your wrong? Like, we're going to do wrong to stop that wrong. Well, does that cancel out your wrong? Like, how do you fight wrong? Do you fight wrong in a wrong way, or do you fight wrong in a good way? Well, it seems that they have a weird way, especially the cardinal has a really messed up way of doing this. And I think what we're going to see is we have a priest in the show who it appears maybe has right motives and trying to do the thing the right way. We have a cardinal in the church who seems to be more motivated by position, power, and maybe this priest will turn out to be the good representation of the religious aspect of it, and the others are bad. And even within the nuns of this order, you have selfish motivation. They're more worried about themselves, their position, their advancement than they are the overall mission. So it's a very interesting dilemma that you see discussed in this episode. Hey, look, those people over there, they're doing blasphemy and they're doing bad. So what are we going to do? Oh, well, we're going to break in and we're going to take and we're going to hurt and wait, she has this and I don't think she deserves it. Well, what are we going to do? Well, if we have to kill her, then we'll kill her. It's like this really, it's this, how can we say, almost a moral relativism, which is interesting that the relativistic morality is kind of showing up inside the church. A lot of elements there we could look at. So, episode 4, Warrior Nun, builds on this theme. And I think the really big theme here is, hey, what are you going to live for? You want to live. Okay, great, go live. But what are you going to live for? Self or a higher purpose, a divine purpose, a sacred purpose. And if to go after that sacred purpose, you're not going to be able to get what you want and live for what you want. How do you resolve that conflict? Well, Ava, the 19-year-old central character in the story, let's just say she is having some serious struggles in what to do with this. And she's finding herself in a big mess. Now, how does all this play out? I don't know. Where the story is going, I don't know, which makes it more interesting. But I am loving the multiple layers in the story. I'm loving there's a still logical religious element. I like there's this young adult drama element. I love how you can take each thing and you can definitely apply it to a religious understanding, but at the same time it lends itself to a non-religious interpretation as well. But you cannot deny, let me state it again, you cannot deny the religious foundation for this. I mean, you're naming each episode after scripture. I mean, like, clearly you're trying to say something. You're definitely using a religious scriptural foundation as part of the storytelling. Now, I'm not saying that means they're trying to promote a religion or they're trying to preach a religion. I'm simply saying that the religious elements are foundational to the storytelling. And if you're going to analyze the show and review the show, you can't just overlook that and ignore that. You've got to at least bring that into the discussion in a meaningful way, in a really meaningful way. Some have looked at it. Some have seen the show more as making a statement about religion and feminism. And there you could possibly see a little bit there. You could possibly see a little bit there. I will say in episode 4, when one of the nuns, they break into this building. I'm not going to explain what's going on, but let's just say, man, when she pulls down she's got her head covering and she pulls down this like metal looking face covering with a cross right there on it. When she pulls down that metal covering and then she starts her fighting with security. Okay, I'll leave it there. Man, that's some good action, some very well choreographed fight scenes, some really good stuff. It's really good. I really liked that fight scene. I don't know who was doing the fight scenes. I don't know who the stunt person was. I don't know who choreographed the fights, but I thought it was really good. A lot of action. And it looked really cool, looked really awesome. So that's something to look forward to in that episode. So currently streaming on Netflix, Warrior Nun. Make it a Warrior Nun weekend. I really do. Just knock out the whole series if you want. If you do binge watching, I don't do binge watching. I watch basically one episode. I try to watch one episode at a time, and then I think about it and analyze it before I move on to the next one. I'm more interested in the message and what they're trying to say, analyzing all the different concepts, more than just, oh, I like the series, let me finish the series so I can move on to a new series. You're missing out on the storytelling. People don't sit in a room and write stories and spend all of this time just for you to ignore the meaning of the story. Right? I mean, they wrote the story for a reason. There's meaning there. There's layers there. So there's motivation. There's a lot being said. So unpack that, and I think you will enjoy the shows a little more. Try to force yourself. I know this is a radical idea. Try to force yourself that when a show ends, before you move on to the next one, take some time and either think about it yourself or spend time talking to another person about what was the show really about? What was its message? What was it trying to say? And trying to analyze it. That makes the shows more enjoyable. It makes the exercise of watching it not mindless. There's always been discussion that television is a mindless exercise. It's a mindless exercise if you don't engage the mind, but there's so much going on in a show. There's plenty there to talk about and analyze and unpack. I mean, Warrior Nun may seem like a ridiculous concept. It may seem like just a cheesy comic book TV series, but there's still a lot there. there's still a lot there. And I would definitely recommend you watching it. A couple of other things on the Peacock TV streaming service. I would strongly recommend watching at least episode 1 of The Capture. Very interesting premise. A lot of questions there. I have not watched episode 2 yet. I will try to get to that. Also this weekend, ESPN Plus. It'll be a UFC Fight Night, I believe, on Saturday night. UFC Fight Night on ESPN Plus. On the WWE Network on Sunday night is the Extreme Rules pay-per-view. Even if you're not a wrestling fan, I'm going to recommend you watch this for this reason. According to reports, and right now because of wrestling and because of the COVID-19 situation, not having a live audience, they are using these opportunities to create matches done like mini movies, which is a very interesting way of telling stories in wrestling. Is, hey, we're not going to do this in a traditional way. We're going to do it in a non-traditional way. And we're going to make movies with special effects and with, music and sound effects. Well, supposedly there is talk they're going to use CGI in one of the matches. Now, I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if it's going to be a horrible looking train wreck or if it's going to be surprisingly awesome, but it'll be definitely worth checking out. I mean, you can get a subscription to the WWE Network for $9.99. You can't really beat that. I mean, that's cheap entertainment. So, you may want to watch that. Just, again, expand your horizons, try different things. But there you have it. Warrior Nun, episode 4, Ecclesiasticus 26. Give me 1 second here. I don't want to give you this, the wrong reference here. Yeah, Ecclesiasticus 26, 9 through 10. Give me 1 second here. I want to try something. Yeah, Ecclesiasticus 26, 9 through 10. I'm going to try this 1 second. I know I'm live on the air, but that's okay. Or I'm live recording this. Give me 1 second. I'm going to make sure. Ecclesiasticus. Okay.
Ecclesiasticus.
All right. I wanted to make sure I was saying it right. Ecclesiasticus. Okay, I got you. Thank you. Ecclesiasticus. Okay. Ecclesiasticus. If I was saying it wrong, I apologize. I'll have to go back and listen and see if I was saying it right. For some reason, when I got there to the Ecclesiasticus 26, 9 through 10, I was like, wait a minute, have I been saying this right? And I think Ecclesiastes, I'm thinking of Ecclesiasticus. Yeah, give me a second here. I'm going to look here. Yeah, I think I'm looking at my Bible really, really quick here. Yeah, Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes is obviously the book in the Bible. Ecclesiasticus is a book in the Catholic canon and the Apocrypha. And I think, in fact, let me look here. I think Ecclesiasticus has a different name. Let me look here. Give me 1 second. I want to tell you the other name, but the minute I do, I'll feel like that I'm wrong here. Sirach. Okay, yes, okay. Sirach. Sirach, the book of all virtuous wisdom, commonly called Wisdom of Sirach, or simply Sirach, or is also known as the Book of Ecclesiasticus. All right, there we go. So it's known as Sirach or Sirach. Sirach, I think. Let me just do this. I know the end of this episode, I'm doing all of this, but that's okay. I just want to make sure. I didn't think about doing any of this before, but that's okay. I think it's Sirach. I think it's Sirach is how you say it. Let me make sure. No, Sirach. It is Sirach. Okay, Sirach. All right. So Sirach, that's is another name for the book of Ecclesiasticus. So if you see Sirach, that is the book of Ecclesiasticus. Just so that you know, it is also called the book of all virtuous wisdom, or the wisdom of Sirach. All right, or the book of Ecclesiasticus. There you go. And you can look up some basic information from it as there. All right. And let me see here. Yeah, Sirach is accepted as part of the canon by Catholics, Eastern Orthodox, and Oriental Orthodox. Anglican tradition considers Sirach, which was published in other Greek Jewish books, and a separate section of the King James Bible. Okay, yeah, early King James versions of the Bible had kind of the Apocrypha and its own separate section, separated from the other books. They kind of separated them out. And then obviously the Protestants reject it as being a part of inspired canon. Catholics accept it. Greek Orthodox, Oriental Orthodox, they accept it. So there's a little bit of background on the book. I know that kind of took a little detour, but that's okay. That's good information to have. And the only reason I was starting to think about this is I was thinking, okay, well, first I was worried that I wasn't saying Ecclesiasticus right. But then I was thinking, wait a minute. I know that a lot of people when they come across, they're going to come across Sirach and not know that that's the book of Ecclesiasticus. And then all of a sudden I started thinking, I probably should tell people that. So then I wanted to make sure I was saying Sirach correctly. There you go. That was my mind chasing a rabbit, and you got to follow me chase that rabbit. But it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it. Okay. I know I could have did all of that beforehand, but that's okay. When it's odd when you're doing a podcast like Currently On, which is, just looking at what's on in the world, on television, music, whatever, you're not doing it necessarily in a religious context, right? So, but because my other podcast is Theology Central and all my other podcasts are religious in nature, sometimes when you're speaking about something of religious nature for a religious podcast, you're under the assumption everyone here is going to know, they're going to know all of these things. So you don't mention them because you kind of believe your audience already understands them. But then I'm thinking, wait, the Currently On podcast, I don't even know who the audience is. So if I say the book of Ecclesiasticus, are they going to know that's the book of Sirach? And so then I had to verify that was also the name of it. And then I wanted to make sure I was saying Ecclesiasticus right, because I keep thinking of Ecclesiastes. So yeah, there you have it. There you have it. All those random thoughts all coming out live on the air. Hey, that's what makes podcasting fun. There you have it. That's what's currently on. It's currently on Netflix. Go watch it. Warrior Nun. Plenty there to think about. I hope you enjoy it, and you can thank me later by sending me, a couple of $1,000. And that'll be sufficient payment. All right, everyone have a good one. Go watch something this weekend. There's plenty of things to watch, plenty of things to enjoy it. Enjoy it. Everyone have a great weekend.